the doctor, the ER doctor, came in and handed us a pamphlet on glioblastoma and said that he had 12 to 16 months to live. Life was a big question mark. It was dark. There was no future. It was just like darkness is all I can explain, because there was no hope. I did believe that for a while that God would save him, but it was just like doctor appointment after doctor's appointment of them being like, he is going to die. Like, it's just going to be a matter of time. Like, do you want more money?
Well, today's episode will be a heartfelt one. I'm sitting down with JoBeth Polley. She's a grief recovery coach and someone who knows firsthand what it means to walk through deep loss. After losing her husband to brain cancer, JoBeth found a way to navigate through that loss and sorrow, and now is helping others walk through their own grief journeys. So if you've ever wondered, how to move forward when life feels shattered, or how to support someone who's grieving, this conversation is going to speak to your heart. So with that, let's welcome JoBeth.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. You and I have chatted before, and our stories are similar, but I would love to get your perspective today. And maybe we could just start with, taking us back to the season that you went through. What was life like for you before that? And then what happened that led you to what you're doing now?
Yeah, so anytime I think about how life was before, it was very complete. My husband and I, my first husband and I, had went through infertility, and so we went through this significant amount of time where we wanted to be a family. We knew that we were going to be parents at some point, just didn't know, how that was going to come. But having that time of life where we had this like strong desire to have a family, and that feeling of incompleteness, knowing that it wasn't just supposed to be the two of us. And so we went through that period, and then we ended up adopting our children, and we had about 5 years of just this real solid feeling of completeness. And I think people who are listening have had moments in their life of being like, this moment feels very complete, or this family feels complete. And we hear a lot of people talk about that when they have their last child. They're like, they knew there was this completeness, that this was where they were gonna stop having children or whatever. So we had this feeling of completeness. We had just bought a farm, which was a dream of ours. It was like adopted kids, bought a farm. We just built our forever home. Like, it was even almost like one of those feelings of like too good to be true. It was like kind of like, oh my gosh, like how is this, like everything's going well. My husband's career was like exploding. He was doing, just hitting all these markers that he wanted to in his career. And our marriage just started to like kind of deteriorate. Things started getting really rough. He was getting really hateful and mean, and like picking fights, and that he was pretty like non-confrontational. And so it's like, what is happening?
Very different than who he used to be. Like something was clearly different.
Yeah, so it was like he was super focused on work, and we couldn't have conversations unless it was about something about work. It was like everything was centered around that, and then just picking fights, like he was like 17 or something, and like I was like, this is really bad. Like, this is really bad. And about 2 weeks after, I was just like, I don't know how much longer I can put up with this. He got a really bad headache and ended up with the diagnosis of terminal brain cancer, which I attribute pretty much all the negative that led up to that to the cancer, because it was in the part of his brain that affects personality. And
can I ask how long that had been going on, where you noticed a personality change?
maybe 6 months.
Okay.
Of things are just like, this is weird. Like, why is he acting like that? Like, that wouldn't have made him mad. Like, he's changing. So probably like 6 months of just like here and there, real random, not consistent.
Yeah.
And so then we get the diagnosis, right? And so everything that was that complete feeling that I was talking about, that we had been incomplete because we didn't have kids, and then we had this completeness where we had kids, and then each other and the farm and the house, and then we're just in this like dark question mark of like, what is life? Like, what is even happening here? Because like we built this life together, and now the orchestrator, one who had like afforded all this and guided us and led us is leaving. And just being like, just life was a big question mark. It was dark. There was no future
Yeah.
there. It was just like darkness is all I can explain, because there was no hope. um I did believe that for a while that God would save him,
Hmm.
but it was just like doctor appointment after doctor's appointment of them being like, he is going to die. Like, it's just going to be a matter of time. Like, do you want more months or less months? That's the decision.
So, when you get this diagnosis, did they give you kind of a time estimate? And also, how old were your children at this time?
So when we got the diagnosis, so they couldn't like technically diagnose him in the hospital, but he had glioblastoma, and it was like on a MRI, it's very obvious when you see glioblastoma. So the ER doctor, came in and handed us a pamphlet on glioblastoma and said that he had 12 to 16 months to live. Like, that was the max. The kids at the time were 6 and 12. And so that was, the one of the saddest moments was coming home from the hospital, and my mom was like, we'll keep the kids tonight. And it was just like, no, because like, he may not be here tomorrow. I mean, this is his brain, and he wanted to spend every moment that he could with the kids. And so we brought him home that night. Just with, it was so confusing and empty, and like I said, no future, no. And how do I tell these kids who didn't have parents for so long,
Yeah.
you're not going to have your dad anymore? Like, that's what's coming. It was just one of the most disgusting, empty, dark feelings ever.
Yeah. And you bring up a good point too. It's like, yeah, you might have 12 to 16 months, but you don't even know within that time frame how much time you really have with him being there, as you know, if it's taking over your brain, he could further change. So time is of the essence to make moments count, I suppose.
For sure. And
Hmm.
so he was the kind of guy that like couldn't even handle like Benadryl. Like, he would hallucinate on Benadryl. And so I'm like, what are we facing here? Because he's going to be on some hard stuff, like
Yeah.
major medications. And so it was just kind of as I had expected. Like, you talked about losing him. We lost him that day, because they put him on seizure medication. They put him on steroids. They put him on like a Tylenol 3, which is fine for most people. But those medications just totally, he never reacted appropriately to anything they gave him. Like,
Hmm.
it had a different response in his like, um with his personality, and the cognitive response to it. Physically, it did what it was supposed to, stop the seizures and all the things. But like,
Right.
you're not supposed to like change your personality, change or have different reactions to these medications. But he did.
Yeah.
And so we lost him that day, which I think made his death easier. But it made the year leading up to it pretty rough, because at some point during that year, it was like the cancer had done so much damage to his brain that like, I didn't want him here anymore. It
Yeah.
was like my prayer changed from please God save him to please take him as soon as possible, because like he was just, he had been transformed as like he had like dementia. It was like late
Right.
stage dementia.
Right. And it's no quality of life for anybody witnessing that too. Now, you mentioned that he changed that day. Did you have glimpses or still moments within that time frame where you had some true connection?
Um, there were maybe a couple moments,
Hmm.
but I don't know. Like, I don't even, honestly, I don't even know if he knew he was dying,
Right.
because he was just just out of it. But also I don't know that he would have like, you know, talked about it if he would have like known.
So, one question that I want to ask you, because I know your faith is really important to you. And I know that when people grieve, whether it's, grieving the loss of someone or even like the loss of the relationship that once was, that it can either bring people closer to their faith or often it draws them away from their faith. How did that work for you?
So there was definitely like, I think if there was an image for it, it would be like a roller coaster.
Yeah.
So there was like these moments of like really high intense connection with God, and like knowing very very clearly like how I wanted to talk to him. I knew what the prayer was. I knew what the ask was. And it was to save my husband's life. Like for this to be the testimony, because my husband wasn't saved until he got the diagnosis,
Mhm.
and he and I kind of had a conversation about it, and he was like, yeah, he's like, I want to, be baptized, and I want to do that. And so he did that. And that was wonderful. um and so like that's such a positive thing from the experience. But the ask was always to save him, to save him, to save him. And then the ask was, please help him pass away as quickly as possible because of the suffering that's happening. And so then there was then he died, and it was like silence.
Mhm.
And my commitment the whole time, and I see this a lot, but people get angry at God, and they turn from him. And I always talk about how I think as Christians we think we have more options than we do. Like we give ourselves liberty and we give ourselves options, and it's like when you're going through a hard time, you don't want to sit back and be like, am I going to still believe in God after this or not? Like, is that like up in the air, you
Mhm.
know? And I was very adamant that I was not going to allow that to be an option. And it was my commitment and my affirmation every day through the whole thing was, God, if you choose to keep him or you choose to take him, like I'm here, I'm not going anywhere. And that looked differently through the whole journey of me not going anywhere. Like I said, times of like, there would be days of prayer and fasting where I talked to God almost all day.
Mhm.
And then there were days where, there would be just like, I'd wake up and just whisper Jesus just to see if, just like, are you still there? Because like, I don't know that I can get through today. Lots of moments like that. But I always made that commitment. Like, I'm not going anywhere. Take him
Mhm.
or leave him. I'm not going anywhere. And then he died. And like I said, it got really quiet. I didn't know how to talk to him anymore. Kind of this like bad attitude of like, I love you, but like, you're going to do what you want to anyways. So like, why should I even ask for anything?
Mhm.
And like, and, and then just being like days where I'm just like, hey, God, and then just silence because I got nothing. I have nothing to say. I am, yes, I'm thankful for all the things that you gave me, but like I can't even like express that right now because
Sure.
my heart is so broken. And so there was that phase, and then it like kind of gradually started going back up again, where I was like, okay, like I see that there is a future. I see that there is hope, and um, but as people who are grieving, and as like you do okay for a while, and then it's like you experience depression,
Mhm.
or you experience these like incredible bouts of sadness, and God's through with you through that. But you have to choose him, and so often I see people just walk away.
Yeah.
And if somebody's listening today and they're in that dark part, and they have lost their relationship with God, it's like, just show up and let him know you're there. Like, and that you don't know how to talk to him. Like, he knows. The
Mhm.
Bible says that he knows our prayers before we speak them. He knows our hearts, and he knows what we're struggling with. And like, if you can just connect with him, and like the smallest of just saying, like, even just like, I'm still here.
Yeah.
Like, that's all I got, but I'm still here.
So, a natural question to ask you is, when you did have that moment with, why do I even ask you for things if you know how it's going to go in the end? How did you come to terms with that, and where did you learn to still trust him, despite what that outcome was?
I don't think trust was ever in question.
Okay.
I was like, I don't know why
Mhm.
my husband had to die. I don't know why that happened. But I know God, and I know his character, and I know that he knows more than me. And I always think about when, like, if I'm in a parking lot and my daughter goes to run through the parking lot and I grab her hand and jerk her back, she doesn't need to know why.
Mhm.
Like, I mean, the big thing right now is like, it's great for your kids to ask why. Like, I get that. But like, in that moment, like, she has to trust that I know what's best for her. When
Yeah.
I yell stop, she has to trust me. And I have a reputation of being trustable. like she
Yeah.
can trust me. And I think that is my relationship with God is just like, I know from what I've read and I know from what I've experienced that like he is good and he works all things for his good. And like, I can't see that.
Mm-hmm.
That's where faith comes in, right? Like, is not seeing and still trusting. And it was just a boundary that I put up. But how did I get out of that? I think it was just time.
Yeah.
Just consistently going back and being like, I'm still here, digging into my Bible with curiosity,
Mm-hmm.
rediscovering it. People talk about being the living word, and I had never experienced it as the living word. It was just the Bible that was almost like a history book,
Mm-hmm.
kind of, or a playbook, kind of, and getting to rediscover it and find comfort and guidance and affirmation about some things as I was reading for it. But it really kind of started to shift when I did find this like curiosity of like, what does it really say? And, really converting it from this old dusty book to the living word.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, I wonder if this is what you walked through too, but obviously when you get a diagnosis for somebody that you love, nothing gets you real serious real fast into God and into your faith like that. And yes, your prayer changes potentially, wanting that miracle testimony and maybe, when you see them suffering that prayer can change. But one thing that I know that I had walked through was, you know, that hunger became alive again, kind of like you were saying, the curiosity. It was like, I don't understand why this happened, but I think through the process, it rooted me into God more, but in a way that really came from my heart, not in this way that, like you said, was this old dusty book. It really was something that genuinely came from my heart. And then even after the passing, it's like, I want to walk closer to you, because at the end of the day, you understand me, you understand the situation, and I have to just trust in that. So did you feel like going through your process during his diagnosis is what got you to get real serious as well?
Yeah, I mean, it made me curious, and then it's like, then all of a sudden, somebody that I'm really close to is in heaven, and
Hmm.
that's like that
Hmm.
strikes more curiosity, and also gives you a little more incentive. Like, I don't think that we should want to be in heaven because somebody else is there. Like, I hear that preached a lot, that people are like, maybe during an altar call or something, they're like, kind of like, do you want to go see, you're going to see these people again if you do this. Like, that's not the reason we should want to go to heaven. The reason we should want to go to heaven is because we love Jesus and we want to serve him and we want to experience his kingdom. An added benefit of it, though, is that there are people there that
Hmm.
we love and that we want to be, live with through eternity. And so, yeah, it made me curious. And then it's like, I don't know. I got to experience him in a way separate from the Bible, separate from church. I
Hmm.
got to experience God and like him bringing me peace in really unpeaceful moments. And even looking back, there were times like when my husband was in 8-hour surgery, brain surgery, and it was kind of post COVID, but still COVID rules. So had to be in the hospital by myself. Like I was the only one allowed into the hospital with him, and he was there for like a month.
Hmm.
And I didn't have any feelings about that. Like, I was just like, yeah, he's in surgery. Like, no big
Yeah.
deal. And it's like, where did that come from?
Yeah.
And so you see these things. And then there was a point in time where it was time for me to give up on trying to save him. And I was crying out to God and asking, like, what do I do? Because I've done everything. I found him the best doctors in the United States. I have, like, you know, we have done everything we're supposed to do. I have prayed for him. I have fasted and prayed for him. I have done everything I can do. And God spoke to me and just said, my child, you've done everything you can. Like, it was just like this permission that
Hmm.
it's okay to give up. Like, it's okay for you to just like surrender this and accept it. And I did. I was like, okay. It was like I got up and I was just like, okay, like that's what we have to do.
Hmm.
He was never mine to save in the first place. But I felt like my faith might save him,
Yeah.
and it didn't. And so, um, man, just like I said, a roller coaster of things.
Mm-hmm.
But me experiencing God personally, like I said, aside from the Bible, aside from church, getting to experience Him unlocked a level of curiosity for me. And
Yeah.
so when people are going through suffering, and I know you have experienced this too, and anybody who has gone through something really terrible, you see, hopefully, that these moments of suffering give us an opportunity for closeness with God that we can't achieve through any other avenue.
Mm-hmm.
Like praying and fasting, great, church, great. But when you're just at rock bottom and He comes along beside you in that, like, it's such a beautiful thing. And we can't say, like, well, I'm so thankful that my husband died or my
Right.
child died or this happened. We're not thankful for that, but we can be thankful for what those moments provided us. And
Mm-hmm.
that seeing Him show up for me in that way totally changed the way I approached life and relationship with Him.
I
And
totally
from then on,
understand.
yeah.
Yeah, I totally understand. And it is how the scripture says this peace that surpasses understanding, because logically it doesn't make sense, but you have something when you lean on him. And I totally understand where people come from, where it's like, gosh, I could really turn my back on God and I could really choose to be mad at him, or I can lean into it. And it's like you can choose either route. I just, why not choose this route that's maybe healthier and more hopeful and helps you find, like you said, we're not thankful for what happened, but we can be thankful in it and find like this is the only word I'm coming up with, the beauty in it, which, obviously, unless you've gone through something like that, you may not understand that completely. But I know in your case, and even mine too, it kind of pivoted us into a different purpose. And I likened it to, like, we learned what we learned during their journey, and it was like they passed that baton on to us
Mm-hmm.
to take what we learned with them and through them and continue to run our race, taking that with us. So let's talk about, you said how you got through it was just time, but I know some things transformed in your life during that process. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so like when he was still alive, so the probably some of the worst part of my grieving happened when he was still alive, that anticipating of him dying. and
Mhm.
and through that it was just kind of like white knuckling my way through it because I was trying to be there for my kids as much as I could because this was really hard and confusing for them because I was gone a lot. And then my husband got really paranoid. And so he thought that I was cheating on him, which is normal. Like, it's all the paranoia is normal. But it didn't make anything any easier knowing that it was normal. So he was like with me all the time, like, because he thought if I went away that I was cheating. And so, like, I kind of had to, like, just fake it through some moments, cried in the shower. I think it's really important that our kids see us grieve, but crying in front of them all the time wouldn't have been very damaging to them also. And so, trying to find balance there of taking care of him, being there for my kids, um, taking care of myself to some extent. Like, that was like a white knuckling experience. Like, just get through it. When he died, it was like, okay, like, I get the opportunity now to decide what I'm going to do with this. Because the last year I was very much in a box of what I had to do. I had to be his caretaker, which was a 24/7 job. And so I was like, like, this happened. This thought was early on of like, if I can figure out how to do this, I'm going to take as many women as I can along with me because I know how hard it is. I had good support. Most people don't. What does that look like for me in the future? But I'm going to figure this out and help as many people as I can. But when he passed, it's almost like I went into like kind of like um almost like psycho mode. Like, it was like I was on a mission. It was like me and the kids have literally suffered for a year watching him suffer, which was the terriblest thing ever. And it's like, okay, we got to do something with our life. And so we were in therapy. We were we Tuesdays was therapy day. We'd go to basketball and go to therapy and go eat Mexican. It was like our best day. It was like our feel good day. Like, everything made us feel okay. Like, everything was going to be okay. But I did everything I could to be better, to get better. It was lots of time in prayer, lots of time in the word. I say prayer. That doesn't mean I was like saying anything, because that was also the time where I was just like, I don't know what to say. It was just like being present with God, holding life with open hands, just saying what, like, I'm fully aware at this point. If you want it for me, it's gonna happen, and if you don't, it's gonna not. So like, I'm just holding life with open hands, but knowing that like I'm here to receive what you have for me, and I'm here to turn away things that you don't want for me. And I would get on the treadmill. It was summertime. We were going into summer, and I would get on the treadmill and it was hot in the garage, and I would like run on the treadmill until I like wanted to like collapse, and I would collapse on the floor and cry. Just cry and just empty out, like let my body empty the like energy, and I would just like lay on the floor in our little gym and just
Yeah.
cry. But it looked, I was doing everything I could to just try to get through it.
Yeah, when you're in the thick of it with somebody and in the trenches with them, like you have to be, right? You're in that caretaker mode and there's really not an option. And then you get this moment of, now you're back to yourself again, and it's like your body's exhausted and it needs to figure out, how to recover. And yeah, I totally understand what you're saying there. I know you had made some changes. Didn't you say you had left your corporate job? And I don't know if that happened right away or took some time,
Yeah.
but what happened with that? And I know as you were saying stuff, I kind of smiled, because it's like when you go through this with somebody, you kind of come out thinking, I don't want to waste time anymore. It's like you're on a mission and you just understand things a little bit more clearly and a little bit more purposeful, perhaps.
Yeah, for sure. So when my husband got sick, we were homeschooling our kids.
Mhm.
We had a direct to consumer beef business with me, my dad, my sister. He had a construction company. I was working for the University of Arkansas. And there was one more, I can't remember what it was. But I had five big things that were
Mhm.
going on. And I
Mhm.
was like, okay, like I cannot do this. And so we kind of looked at like, well, I got to keep the farm or else we're going to have to move because we live on this farm. So I was like, got to keep the farm. And then it was like, which one is like the least lucrative and the one that like is probably sucking the most life out of me, and it was my job, working for the university. But in that time it was like I also want to, like, I want to work with people, I want to help people walk through this.
Mhm.
Because when I was in the process of making that decision, I was like, I can get a job or do something working with people, and that's really what I want to do. Because once you're on the other side of it and you're like, I just survived that,
Mhm.
it's empowering.
Mhm.
Um, but also I knew that just from talking to people in my community that I was an example of how to handle something like this. Like,
Mhm.
how do you keep showing up? How do you keep getting up out of bed? Like, and I want to be um, an example to others of what's possible.
Mhm.
And I was looking for that. I was searching for that. Looking at people in my community that had lost their husbands and being like, oh, okay, well, she did it. So if she did it, I can do it. And listen, one of the ladies I was looking to the most, I don't even know her. I just drove by her house every day. And when my husband was in hospice, it was Christmas time. And I would drive home, and she had this big house that sat right on the highway. And I would see her Christmas tree. She'd been widowed for years and older. And I was like, okay, if she can do it, I can do it. That's legit, like, about all I know about her. But
Mhm.
like, it was just that small little thing, and she doesn't even know it. I should tell her.
Yeah.
But like, it's just that small thing. And if somebody comes across this video, or they come across, a short or something, like, they can look at me and be like, okay, her husband died when her kids were young. Like, if she can do it, I can do it. And I want people to have that attitude.
Yeah. So what are some, would you say, some effective strategies for that you walked through or that you teach on, like how to cope with grief and get through it on a daily basis? Because I know it comes in waves and at different levels.
Yeah, for sure. Well, there's like the nitty gritty of like what I teach and what I take people through. But like, one of the biggest things that like I think we're missing is when we're grieving, we have this idea that we should be strong for others and that we have to like show up in a certain way. And I think that, and this kind of goes against the Christ-like mentality that we should have, but I think that it's very appropriate that when we're in times like this, that we put ourselves first. You know, I was thinking about myself with my kids, and it's like, what if I would have like put them first during that time? Like, how would it have prolonged my recovery? If I would have been putting them first, how much would it have affected the way I was showing up for them? When I put myself, like, I'm the kind of person that I go all in, and that some people get that, some people don't. If you're one of those people, you're like, oh, I'm you, right? But like, some people go all in and some people don't, but I'm the person that goes all in, and it does not matter what it is. And that's how I viewed my recovery too. And so I think that one of the best things you can do is be like, okay, this happened, whether it's a divorce, a diagnosis, a death, whatever it is, this happened. How can I be the best that I can be given that this thing happened to me? Okay.
Right.
I was a victim. I have some trauma, but what can I do with it? How great can I be from this situation? And I did. I went all in. I was reading what I could read. I was feeling my feelings. I was journaling. I was taking care of my health. I was working out. I was getting therapy, like going through all the things. And I think that's just a huge part that people miss. They think I can do it alone, and I can just like kind of take a back seat to my grief and just kind of let it happen. And I would not let it happen. I would not just like go with the flow when it came to my recovery, because what I see is when people go with the flow, they're 5-6 years down the road, and 5-6 years down the road is just as hard as day 2, day 3. And I don't want that for anybody, but I think that so often it's just like, be strong for others, put other people first, and then the next thing you know, you're not okay, and your years of your life have passed. And especially if you have kids, like, they're here for such a short period of time, like in our homes. Like, it's in your best interest to get better so that you can show up for them. And that is, you can call it selfish, you can call it whatever you want to, but like, you need to put yourself first. And you know, what does putting yourself first look like? Being in therapy, having a grief coach, being in a support group, journaling your feelings, giving yourself time to grieve. Like, it's hard to grieve with kids in the house because you want to cry really loudly, maybe even scream. And so, you know, if you have the opportunity to get rid of them for a little bit, you know, like, they go to grandma's, they go to a friend's house, maybe enroll them in, you know, some kind of youth group or something that gives you a second to be away from them. Because like I said, you need to grieve in front of them. They need to see that it's okay. Like, mommy's crying because the situation happened. Like, that's okay.
Right.
But if we're a mess all the time in front of them, like, that they're very worried about us when that happens. But then also, you can't be strong all the time, because then that's not good for you.
Yeah, it's like you want them to see the resilience too, that it's okay to, you know, feel what you're going through and walk through it, but you can, you know, bounce back from that. So I would kind of think like it's quite the balancing act. You know, I hear what you're saying in terms of like, put you first and go through this process and get it out. But in my experience too, sometimes it's like, I don't feel it all this day, you know, and it might hit me next month when I'm on a walk or something triggers or a song comes on or whatever it is. So when you say, let's focus on me and kind of be selfish, which I think we do need to do because we need healing out of that as well. How do you balance that with, well, what if I'm not feeling super sad today? Because I don't know about you, but I walked through a lot of numbness too. So I have a dog in the background here making some noises, but I walked through some numbness with it. And it was like I couldn't force those feelings to come until they came. So how do you balance that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, like, gosh, the days where I was numb, I was like, thank goodness. Like, those were like good days. I was like, oh gosh, I feel nothing. Like, that was so much better than what I have been feeling. But I think you got to I don't think there's a way to pull yourself out of the numbness that you feel. But I think that when the time does come where you are feeling it is to completely feel it.
Yeah.
Like go all in. So that could be like, I'm feeling really sad today. I'm going to look at pictures and I'm going to watch videos and I'm going to turn on sad music and I'm going to get as sad as I can possibly get. Like
Mm-hmm.
that is where you go because you want to like it's like, oh, it's here, and you just want to just like dump all of it out because like the more you do that, the quicker you're going to heal and the better you're
Yeah.
going to be because you're releasing that. It's an emotional release. You're acknowledging your feelings, being able to put as many feeling words to it as you can. So if you're like, gosh, I'm really angry or I'm frustrated that this is my life now, and like, I'm disappointed, and, just go through all the things that, those were some things that I felt like disappointed. Disappointed. It was like one of
Yeah.
the biggest ones. I'm so disappointed that this is my life now. Like, so disappointed. And just really leaning into it as much as you possibly can.
Yeah.
And that's one of the best things you can do if you want to feel better. But a lot of times we're like, oh, I'm crying or I don't want to cry. Um, like, and so you just like suck it up and
Mm-hmm.
you set yourself back every time you do that. And I also understand people are like, well, I want to be crying all the time. I want to be crying at work and crying in front of my kids and crying at church and crying in the car. And I understand that. And I don't like think that necessarily would be helpful either. But, when you do have the moments where you can be alone or you can say, hey, I need a minute to let go and just release all that. That's what's
Mm-hmm.
best. Um, and two, we've made crying such a thing. Like it has to like have this big meaning, or like if you cry, people feel sorry for you. And we hate that, or we see somebody crying in church and we think something's wrong with them, but like I feel like if we could normalize crying, that
Yeah.
would be great.
Yeah, like it's a release,
Right, like we've
Yes.
normalized being angry.
Yeah.
Like, oh, she's angry or he's angry. Can we normalize just being sad and like letting those? That's
Mm-hmm.
like, that would be my wish that we could do that. I think we've done that in my family, just
Yeah.
like, but outside of the family, it's still pretty much something's wrong with you if you're
It's a
crying.
great point, and I think authenticity in who we are and what we're feeling and what we're walking through speaks volumes to people that are watching. So if you are, if you have a moment at work and it brings you to tears, it's hopefully it's not something that you're going through every day, but when you have that one moment, it's okay and it's just part of the process and part of
Right.
the release. I know that you created a program. Obviously, your journey led you to create this program, and it's helping you to help others navigate their own grief. Can you tell us a little bit more about, what that program looks like and maybe where people can go to find out some more information about it?
Yeah, so I got trained in the grief recovery method, which is an evidence-based program that takes people, through the 8 weeks of grief support. And it's really heavy in education the first 2 weeks,
Mhm.
which is really important because you need time to, establish some trust among you and your group and to also become comfortable because it's such a vulnerable situation. But it's heavy in education. We haven't been taught anything about grief really. Um, we grieve how our parents grieved, most likely. And so we really lay a foundation of education in the beginning and look at what grief is, but
Mhm.
also what it's looked like for you, not just in this situation, but what it's looked like for you over your life. And we really take a, 30,000-foot view of
Mhm.
your loss. And it's called the loss history graph that we create. And then we do a relationship graph, which is graphing a relationship, acknowledging the good and the bad that was in the relationship. But the whole idea of the program is to feel complete because I think a lot of times when we are grieving, there's just this open ended life. It's
Yeah.
like there was no end, there was no finality to it. It just like abruptly was ended before there was a conclusion. And so we kind of wrap that all up and we put it in a box where you can accept it and have peace with it. You're always going to have grief. You're always
Mhm.
going to miss your loved one. There is no magic formula to not feel sad that you lost somebody. And I always say I'm committed to feeling sad. I don't ever want to look back on this loss and be like, not have that feeling, that emotion.
Mhm.
But I want to move forward and live my life. I want to go do some incredible, awesome things. Um, And that's what I help people do. Honor their loved one and move forward in life.
Yeah.
Honoring their grief, honoring the person that they lost. And I do this in groups and I do it individually as well, because some people, groups are just not for some people. There's no way I would have joined a group. But also there's a lot of people out there that need a group. Yeah. And they need that support and they want that community. And so it really just depends on who you are. But it starts out as 8 weeks, and, because that's like the foundation that we're laying, and then it can go beyond that. But a lot of times I see people who they'll come to me and be like, well, this is the grief that's really bothering me. But then once we get in there and we start dissecting their loss, a lot of times it's something that happened back in childhood that's been a burden to them their whole life, and we get to go back and wrap that up and put it in a box and find healing and peace in it. And so it's amazing what happens in this program. And it's a foundation that everybody who has experienced loss needs. And I'm sure there's people listening that are like, okay, that doesn't really apply to me because I've never experienced loss. But loss and grief, there's 40 different categories, 40 different recognized losses. And we talked about death and diagnoses and divorces, but there's also moving and change of financial situations, estrangements. I see so many estrangements. People that we've lost that are still here on earth. A lot of times
a friendship that breaks up, or yes, your parent. Yes, I was going to ask you if this is just solely grief in terms of death, but there's many types of griefs and loss that we can be walking through.
For sure. And that's what I see so often is somebody will come to me and they'll be like, well, my partner died, or I typically draw those people to me, but they have this loss. But then when we dig, maybe they were sexually abused and their mom never protected them. And so the mom is the issue. And we can't handle this current situation because we never dealt with this issue that has been lifelong. And it's just like removing a huge thorn, being able to heal a part of us that honestly most people don't even realize is a problem. Like they've buried that. Like that was part of the past. That is not a thing anymore. And then we get to doing the work and it's like, oh, this is a problem. And they recognize it. It's never me. It's never me. It's always their awareness that brings us forward. So, there's a long list of hurts, situations where you have lost your sense of trust, your security, your safety. Those are all really big detrimental things that I help people walk through.
Yeah. Yeah. Like you walk them through that process and then they uncover it as they've walked through, their life experiences and start to acknowledge them and become aware of them. So do you help all ages? Because I know if somebody's going through a loss, later in life, it might look very different than what you walked through, still being young and hopeful. It might have two different, future outlooks, I would say. Does that matter at all?
It doesn't matter. So that's another thing that's cool about the program is like to build trust. Like I always share first, and that's something that's very different than therapy. So you go to therapy, you may be with your therapist for 10 years, which you shouldn't be, by the way. Therapy's probably not working if you've been there for 10 years, but you go to therapy, you know nothing about your therapist. Like you go spill the beans and you know nothing about them. So that's how this relationship with me and my clients is different, is that I share first. I set the example. I model that vulnerability, and then they do the same. And so we talk about how we don't compare grief. Like somebody in their 70s would say to me, well, my husband just died, but I didn't lose him when I was young like you did. Like yours is worse. Like teaching people that like we don't compare grief. Yeah. And so like when you come to me, your sole purpose is to make to be better, to get better, to feel okay again. And so my age is irrelevant because this experience is all about you and the connection that we will have and friendship moving forward. That's going to help you to, like I said, be okay again. That's where we're trying to go. We're not trying to like take on the world. Yeah. Just want to be okay again. Feel okay. That. See some light. See that there is light in this world, because I know for so many grievers, myself included, there was a long period of time where I had no desire for life. I never was like thinking about taking my life necessarily, but I would like almost like fantasize about being in a car wreck and getting killed because I was like, that would be so easy and I wouldn't have to do it. Like it would, or I could cross the center line and make this look like an accident. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like all these thoughts were running through my head, and it felt very scary that I was having those thoughts. But the more I work with people who are grieving, I realized that that's pretty normal to not see a purpose or a light anymore. And I really, really want people to understand that if you're in that that stage of your grief, that it's normal and there's light on the other side. You just have to stay with it and put the work and time in and get to it because it's there.
I know that God played a big part in your recovery and you're finding your new purpose. Is there any element of this program that's faith-based as well, or to each?
Yeah, so no, it's not. And there's a good reason for it. And that's another big thing that people come in, they think that there's this big death that has, or this big event that has caused them to be grieving so hard. But once we get to digging, it's like, it's not like, why did this person die? It's why did God do this to me? And so this program presents a very organic opportunity for people to explore that on their own. Because if you're with somebody and they're a Christian but they've left the church, they're not praying anymore, they're so angry at God, and you're like, here's a Christian program. They're like, I don't want any part of that. And so it's really amazing. And like I said, it's always them. But if there is a believer that is in my group and they are really struggling with grief, God is always going to come up. And a lot of times, like, they think that this big death or loss is the problem, but it's actually like they don't trust God anymore. And then I get the opportunity to walk them through the process of like doing, God is our relationship that we're going to work on, and getting to walk them through healing that relationship. And that's really amazing.
Yeah. Oh, such beautiful things that you say. How, what about if somebody's listening, how do they know if like, oh, I'm grieving normally, or maybe I should seek some more professional help and get a coach to kind of walk me through that? Is there a distinct difference at all? Or is it just more of if you're feeling the need to reach out and get that extra support, then, trust that instinct?
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously trust your instinct on it, but also there's like three answers to this. Trust your instinct, yes. But like, I feel like if there's ever an endpoint that you're trying to get to, like if your kid was wanting to be in the NBA, like you'd get him a basketball coach, right? If your kid was wanting to be a piano player, you would get him a piano teacher, right? But then we have these big events like death, and we're like, oh, I'm gonna wing this. Like, I'm just gonna go do it. I've never done it before, but I'll figure it out. Like, it's a natural process, and it's really not as natural as like we want to think it is. It's just gonna, like, time's gonna heal it and it's gonna be okay. So like hiring a therapist or a coach can expedite the process. My therapist was like, you can't expedite this, and I was like, watch me, because like I'm pretty sure if I go all in and I do everything that you're saying, and I feel my feelings and like go through this process, like I'm gonna do this faster than other people would. And I did.
Yeah.
And that, like I said, that's also a personality thing. But if you have the opportunity to do something quicker and easier with somebody than you could do alone, like, why wouldn't you do that?
Yeah.
So the third part, and the real question you're asking, is like, how do you know when you have a problem? Like, how do you know when this is so bad you need help? And that's when we get into something called STIRBs, which is short-term energy relieving behaviors. So we all do it. We all STIRB. A mild thing would be like if you're working and something gets real hard, you pick up your Facebook and start scrolling to get that dopamine hit and to release that tension of I'm doing something hard. So that's okay. It's still, we don't want to do that, but that's okay. If you're drinking to feel better, if you're doing drugs to feel better, if you're turning to sex or pornography, like those things are not okay. Sometimes it can even get to a point where you are shopping and you're sabotaging your financial life because you're looking for those dopamine hits through shopping. And I say, like, picking up your phone and scrolling social media is not a big deal, but like if you have little kids, are you missing out on their life because you're trying to cover up your emotions with looking at other people's life on social media. So I say, like, it's not a big deal, but is it? I think you have to take a real clear look at your life and be like, what am I hurting by not healing? And if you're like, I'm really turned into God and I'm working out and I'm really sad some days, but I'm journaling, and like, maybe you don't need a coach. But if you are a therapist, but if you're doing some of these things, the sex, the drugs, the alcohol, the just tapping out, if you're sleeping all the time, like if you're turning to sleep, there's something everybody's doing, and I think you just have to gauge, like, is this something that is really bad for me, or is this something that is good? I was working out a lot. I was shopping a lot. Those were definitely my two things. Like those Amazon boxes were a dopamine hit that I was feeling. I was buying chickens. We live on a farm. I bought so many chickens. Like, and everybody knew what I was doing. Like everybody knew, but it was like, just let her go. But like, you could totally wreck yourself financially doing that too. So that's what I say. If you feel like any of those three are like you, like, reach out. And I always encourage people, just reach out and talk to me, because like I can tell like pretty quick talking to somebody, like, yes, you should work with me. This would be a great idea. Or you need to be in therapy, or maybe you need to go to rehab. Like because I'm not the answer for every situation, but I can help people get clarity on what direction they need to take. Because if you think you need help, like, I can definitely be like, give my opinion on what the next steps are.
I love it. So much information, JoBeth. Thank you. Thank you for sharing your story and what you walked through, and then obviously what you're doing with the pain that you experienced, and now helping encourage so many other people. I'm going to make sure to put links below so that if anyone's looking to learn more about you or find out about your program, that they'll have access to do so. But for those that are listening, do you want to verbally say where they can go to find you?
Yeah, so it's JoBeth Polley on Facebook, and then NWA Grief Specialists with an S is my website, and I have a Facebook account and Instagram account around that, and so you can find stuff about grief there, and then more personal stuff on Facebook.
Oh, perfect. Well, thank you again for your time today. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Please remember, if you liked what you heard and want more faith-based inspired information and content, please remember to like, share, subscribe, and follow. Have a great day.